All right, today we're jumping into a fantastic legal detective story, one that comes straight from the pages of the Talmud. This whole thing is packed with contradictions, some seriously sharp-witted sages, and a mystery that really boils down to one big question. Why would a top rabbi just openly defy a major court ruling? So let's get into it and unravel this ancient puzzle.
So right off the bat, we're hit with this huge paradox. On one side, you have an official, clear-cut prohibition from the highest court in the land. And on the other, you've got an eyewitness telling us that one of the most revered sages out there, Rabbi Yochanan, is doing the exact opposite. I mean, that's kind of like a Supreme Court justice just publicly ignoring a law they just passed. It makes no sense.
So this is the puzzle we're going to try to solve. Was Rabbi Yochanan just out of the loop? Did he not get the memo? Was the ruling itself maybe a little fuzzy? Or is there something much deeper going on here? Let's start digging into the evidence piece by piece.
You know, every good mystery starts with getting the facts straight. So, first up, let's nail down what the law actually was, and look at the very first time someone challenged how it should be understood.
The case kicks off with this very direct statement, and it's reported by a sage named Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi. He says, look, Rabban Gamliel and his court talked it over and came to a clear verdict. You can't eat meat from a Samaritan slaughter. Seems simple enough, right? A straightforward ban.
But then, almost immediately, another sage, Rabbi Zera, starts poking holes in it. You can think of him as our lead detective in this story. He asked this really crucial question. Hold on, is this a total, absolute ban? Or does it only count if no one's watching? I mean, what if a Jew is standing right there, supervising the whole thing? Does that change the equation?
Whoa. Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi's response is incredibly sharp. He basically says, that's such a rookie question, it sounds like you haven't even studied law. He's making it crystal clear that, in his view, the ban is absolute, no exceptions, and everyone should know that. It adds a little bit of courtroom drama to the whole thing.
Okay, so the official line is that the law is absolute. But now, let's get to the testimony that just blows this case wide open and seems to completely contradict that hardline stance.
And here it is, the bombshell. Rabbi Asi, another highly respected figure, comes forward as an eyewitness. He didn't just hear a rumor. He saw Rabbi Yochanan eating this supposedly forbidden meat. And what's more, Rabbi Asi ate it too, right there with him. So now we don't have just one revered sage who seems to be breaking the law. We've got two. The plot definitely thickens.
So how do we square the circle? The law says one thing, but these great sages are doing another. This is where our detective, Rabbi Zera, comes back into the picture. And what's so cool is he doesn't need any new evidence. He cracks the whole case using pure, elegant logic. Okay, let's walk through his reasoning, because it's actually pretty brilliant. He starts with a theological principle that everyone would agree on. God protects righteous people from sinning by accident. Then, he states a fact that's beyond dispute. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Asi are definitely righteous men. So he concludes it is impossible that they just didn't know about the ban. The only logical explanation left is that they knew all about the ruling and made a conscious legal decision to disagree with it. And boom, that solves our initial paradox. This whole mystery isn't about someone being ignorant of the law. It's about a legitimate legal disagreement. Rabbi Yochanan wasn't a lawbreaker. He was a dissenter. He represented a totally different and, in his view, valid legal opinion that said the ban wasn't actually binding. The law was real, but it was contested right from the very beginning.
So we've solved the what. We now know there was a legal dispute. But that just leads to an even more interesting question. Why? What made Rabban Gamliel's court issue such a controversial ban in the first place? Let's dig into the backstory.
The trail begins with this really cryptic warning. A student of the famous Rabbi Meir is going to buy some wine from Samaritans, and an elder stops him and quotes this verse from Proverbs. It's a pretty dramatic way of saying, hey, watch out, something's not right here. But what was the danger?
Well, that warning kicked off a whole investigation. And what his team found was that a minority of Samaritans were apparently worshiping the image of a dove on their holy site, Mount Gerizim. Now, for Rabbi Meir, this was a huge deal. He operated on a legal principle where you have to be concerned about what even a minority is doing. So based on the actions of this one small group, he issued a sweeping decree against all Samaritans. The fear was that any slaughter they did might be for the purpose of idol worship, which would make the meat totally forbidden.
And that's the final piece of the puzzle. Rabban Gamliel's court, the one that started our whole story, they just adopted Rabbi Meir's reasoning.
The ban wasn't random, it was based on this very specific incident and a particular cautious legal approach to dealing with it.
But, the story doesn't stop there. Legal traditions aren't stuck in time. They evolve. So a later generation of sages came along and revisited this entire issue, which led to a final, really definitive change in how Samaritans were viewed in the eyes of the law.
This timeline really shows you how the relationship changed over generations. At first, things seem pretty normal, with trade and so on. Then, Rabbi Meir's decree comes down because of that dove incident. Then, later on, another investigation gets launched after a similar warning, this time that the locals aren't keepers of the Torah, and this leads to a final, sweeping ruling. From here on out, Samaritans are to be considered full-fledged Gentiles.
Now, that sounds incredibly harsh, right? But with a legal system as precise and as detailed as the Talmud, you always have to ask, what does a technical term like that actually mean in practice? Does it change everything, or is it targeted at something very, very specific?
And this table shows you just how incredibly precise the law can be. The actual real-world impact of this big declaration had to do with a very specific area of civil law: how you transfer property rights in a shared courtyard on Shabbat. A Jew can just say the words, "My domain is transferred to you," but a Gentile can't. They have to formally lease it. After this new decree, Samaritans now fall into that second category. They have to use the exact same legal tool as a Gentile.
So here's the key takeaway. This dramatic-sounding final verdict wasn't some broad statement on Samaritan identity or belief. Nope. It was a technical, legal reclassification that had a very narrow, very practical application in civil law. It just goes to show you that what sounds like a massive social decree is often, deep down, a precise legal tweak.
And all of this leaves us with a final thought to chew on. This one case gives us a perfect window into the dynamic push and pull inside an ancient legal system. We saw the weight of precedent from a high court, the pure force of logic from a questioning sage, and the undeniable impact of real life, of what people were actually doing. It really makes you wonder how these ancient texts managed to weave all those threads together to create a legal tradition that's not only stable enough to last, but also flexible enough to adapt for thousands of years.